Greetings, everyone. Thank you for joining us for IE30 live, and Happy New Year to all of our colleagues from around the world and throughout the United States. We appreciate you taking the time to join us today. This is our town hall on talking about the way forward and how we chart the way forward in a new administration. And so we have a lot of grounds to cover, and I'm pleased to have several of my colleagues who are joining us today for this important discussion. First and foremost, let me start by introducing our colleagues, and then we're going to get into the agenda for today. We have Jill Allen Murray. Jill is a member of our team. She's familiar to many of you, I believe. She's NAFSA Deputy Executive Director for Public Policy here at NAFSA. We have Rachel Banks, and Rachel has been with NAFSA for quite a while as well and is familiar to many. Rachel is the Senior Director for Public Policy and Legislative Strategy here at NAFSA. And last and certainly not least is Dr. Ahmad Ezzeddine. Ahmad is the President and Chair of the Board of NAFSA. He started his term just on January 1st. And we're glad that he could join us. And congratulations, Ahmad, on coming into this role. We're very excited to work with you in partnership. So with that, here are three sort of panelists who are with me today. And our agenda is sort of the following. We will talk about basically provide, a brief overview of NAFSA's priorities and public policy initiatives. It's important for folks to know that we've been down this road for quite a long time. And so we'll talk about what has been our enduring NAFSA policies, priorities, and public policy initiatives. Then we're going to talk about the work, what we have prioritized for this administration. So we'll have an opportunity to share that with you, the documents that we've put together regarding the administration and what we see as the priorities for the administration that we want to make sure that we can find some common grounds on. And then we're going to make sure that we talk about the resources. We want to talk about how can you stay engaged with us? Where can you find the most up-to-date information as you navigate new and different terrains and given the speed of information that you're expected to be able to digest? So we'll make sure we talk about that and what would be some of our follow-up events from this session. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, to Jill Allen Murray and Rachel Banks, to talk to us about the priorities on the NAFSA side and what has been sort of our communication of priorities to the administration. So I'm going to turn it over to Rachel and then to Jill. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Fanta. So I want to start off just by going through and articulating what have been NAFSA's longstanding and enduring public policy priorities that really give direction to the work that we do as an association. And those two main pillars have been and continue to be attracting international students and scholar talent to our colleges and universities, as well as increasing access to and participation in study abroad for U.S. college students. We also have a long history of advocating for U.S. government international education programs, key programs, and our long-standing membership in both the Alliance for International Exchange, which supports funding for State Department international education and exchange programs, as well as our membership in the Coalition for International Education, which supports funding for Department of Education Title VI and Fulbright-Hays programming, which you all may be familiar with, really reflects this longstanding commitment. Now, going back to even the early 2000s, NAFSA was at the forefront and led groundbreaking task forces, which identified priority recommendations for successfully attracting international students, as well as growing study abroad. And these recommendations really provided substance and guidance for what led to subsequent legislation. For international students and scholars, some of you may remember, following the events of 9/11, we really were out there making a strong case for balancing, not just, for balancing national security and openness, that being open and openness leads to greater mutual understanding and therefore enhances our national security. And this really led to the introduction of legislation in Congress, such as the Action Act in 2008, and then later the successful passage of the 2013 Comprehensive Immigration Reform Bill that occurred in the Senate. And these items, that final Senate bill included language allowing dual intent for F1 students, which is a longstanding NAFSA priority and continues to be. We are also longtime members of Compete America, which is a coalition of business and higher education organizations advocating for high-skilled immigration reform that some of you also may be familiar with. With respect to expanding study abroad, NAFSA has long advocated that study abroad must be a pillar of U.S. higher education to ensure that every college student graduates with a study abroad experience on their transcript. Yet still today, just 10% of graduates do so. And for many years, we have championed capacity building grants as an essential way to grow study abroad participation in a meaningful way. Now, this advocacy has helped lay the foundation for current State Department funded grant programs, such as the 100,000 Strong in the Americas and the IDEAS program. Many of you tuning in are hopefully also familiar with the Senator Paul Simon Study Abroad Program Act. Now, while it has taken on different iterations over the years, the current bill, which would codify the IDEAS program, remains a top priority for NAFSA and for its sponsors in Congress. So these two main pillars, attracting international talent and growing study abroad, continue to be NAFSA's priorities, and they are reflected in the priorities we have laid out for the Trump-Vance administration, which Jill will talk about next. So I hand it over to Jill.
Thanks so much, Rachel. Appreciate you laying all that out for everyone. So you can see in the chat, I believe Carrie's going to share with you a link that we have to NAFSA's recently launched recommendations for the incoming Trump administration. And this is in a form of a fairly short memo. And I'll talk a little bit about Congress as well, but I'd just like to run through what we have established in terms of a proactive policy objectives with the Trump administration. So you see it's concise. We've been very clear to ensure that our priorities are viewed within the lens of the priorities of the Trump administration. That is the audience for this memo. And of course, in doing so, we focus on the benefit to Americans, including job growth and improved economic conditions for American citizens. We want to ensure that it's clear that adopting policies that we're promoting would result in retaining the best and brightest international students to benefit the United States. We, in doing so, emphasize Trump's previous support for, quote, stapling a green card to college diplomas and identifying that international education priorities would help American businesses in particular. It's important for us to acknowledge that our priorities for retaining international talent are not at odds with improving the economic conditions of American citizens. This is sometimes something we have heard lately. And it's important for us to be proactive in messaging that those things can all be handled in an all of the above approach. There should be opportunities for advancement for American citizens and for international students. So we particularly see this and highlight this through achieving an education in STEM fields. I think it's appropriate to look at some of the specifics. So if you look at the bottom of both sections of our policy memo, you'll see a list of bullets where we outline specific international student recommendations, which include improving visa processing and immigration filings, which we believe would align well with an improved government efficiency approach. Of course, something we've heard a lot about this administration advancing. We also push for providing dual intent and pathways to employment. Again, something that Trump has indicated he's supportive of the latter, not the former. And then implementing the National Academy of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine's recommendations, which would include a whole of government talent strategy and creating pathways for foreign-born STEM talent to work and contribute to the United States. You hear a running theme here. And so specifically for American students, we urge the Trump administration to prioritize global competency of U.S. students, to support policies to increase the number of American students studying abroad, something you heard Rachel talk about, and providing sufficient funding for existing U.S. international education programs that provide American students with opportunities to advance their international knowledge and competency. So in turning now to our advocacy with Congress, there's some alignment here, and no surprise, we will continue to prioritize the Senator Paul Simon Study Abroad Program Act. If you want to look in the chat too, you can see a different place where we have some issue briefs focused on the audience of Congress and things that we ask our advocates to sometimes share with their own members of Congress. So in addition to the Senator Paul Simon Study Abroad Program Act, on the International Student and Scholar front, we also support ideas like the Keep STEM Talent Act, which would create a path to green card for international students who graduate from a U.S. institution with a master's degree or higher in STEM subjects. So I'm sure you'll see clearly here that from Rachel's examples and then those that we are pushing forward with the Trump-Vance administration and the items that we've highlighted with Congress, that there's a continued alignment in what NAFSA has outlined proactively and will continue to work on. So I'm going to turn it over to Ahmad.
And just before I turn it over to Ahmad, I want to really emphasize a couple of things as we start this conversation. What you're hearing from the team around our priorities, first and foremost, is if you don't remember anything, we are continuing with what has been our enduring priorities. The priorities that we have set and the priorities we've communicated to the administration, we have been very consistent over this period of time about why those needs to continue to be priorities. We believe those to be in the national interest of the U.S. We believe those to be very important to U.S. engagement with the world and the benefit of international education. So I just wanted to start with that. The second piece that you'll hear from Jill's comment about the memo that we have written for the Trump-Vance administration is we are looking for where we see common ground with this administration. The administration has been very clear in coming in that they are focused on the economy, they're focused on growing the economy, they're focused on workforce development, that those are things that are incredibly important to them. And this memo reflects some of their initial engagement and the areas that they've prioritized. We're making the economic argument for why international education is to the benefit of this nation and why it is important for the administration to remain focused on these areas, including pathways to employment, including efficiencies that needs to be, that needs to be improved when it comes to processing of immigration sort of petitions and benefits and so forth. That's what this memo is aligned with. And so just wanted to preface that. Of course, international education is much, much more than the economic piece. But the economic piece is something we cannot deny, and it is a priority, and it is something that we have a common ground with the administration on, and so it is talking about that. With that said, I'm going to turn it over to Ahmad, who has a couple of comments and observations. Back to you, Ahmad.
Good morning, good day, everyone. First, I'm honored and excited about working with you in this new capacity with the team at NAFSA and with all our members and friends and partners. These are certain uncertain times that understandably are generating anxiety for all of us, some anxiety. But what I'd like to remind all of us also is that this is not the first crisis or transition, as all of us have mentioned already, that we have weathered over the last few years. And the resilience that we all go through as international education and educators is certainly something that we are proud of, and will get us through these challenging times that we're uncertain times, I think, that we are going through. And we are successful at NAFSA, as you indicated, Fanta, because we are consistent in the focus on the mission, the importance of the work, and the value of the work, and the advocacy and coalition building that we pursue year-round. Jill and Rachel mentioned the extensive connections and liaison we have across the country and across with government, with organizations, with partners, and with members, the volunteer leaders that we have, the institutions that we all work at. We have our own networks also that often are brought to support the work that we do. The work we do with our sister institutions and partners in Washington across the country is also something that we have and we will lean on in the coming months. Lastly, I want to talk about the expertise that we have built and developed over decades. The work that Jill and Rachel are going to be talking about today, it has been in the works for months now. They've been preparing for this work, and this is something that we will continue to do over as things come out with this new transition, with the new administration. So this is something that we will all work through. It's going to require all of our efforts and the continuous focus on the mission and the goals that we have, which have not changed and will not change.
Thank you, Ahmad. Thank you for that. And before we go into more of the sort of the priorities, I think this is a good opportunity to talk about, we talk about the team here at NAFSA that is engaging this day in and day out, and the expertise that lives within NAFSA for us to be able to do this work and the decades of work that has happened in this space. So I think it's important for me to talk a little bit about who are the members of this team, because we have quite a few members who are new. And we have folks here who are friends of NAFSA who may not be aware of all of the folks who are involved in this work. We have our public policy team, and we also have our regulatory team. They work hand in hand at NAFSA on ensuring that we're up to date on a regular basis and constantly have the pulse of the regulatory issues that are coming our way, and then are responding to that, helping to translate that for our members, making sure that we're in liaison work with the government agencies that we are working with on a regular basis. And then our public policy team continues to drive the public policy agenda. And so with that, I'm going to ask Carrie to please perhaps put up a photo of some of the folks who are on this team, so that you all know the deep expertise that is here and the folks that are working on this day in and day out. Among our folks, again, we have our regulatory practice team, and we also have, as I said, our public policy team. Some will be familiar to you, others are in the background and may not be as familiar to you. And so I want to make sure to highlight them. First, on the public policy side, you have, of course, Jill Allen Murray, who is our Deputy Executive Director for Public Policy. Jill comes with extensive experience in this space, having worked in Congress and in other areas. You have Rachel Banks, who's been with NAFSA for quite a long time, also does a lot of our legislative work and strategy, and she's on the public policy team. We have Erica Stewart, who's a Senior Director for Advocacy and Strategic Communications. Erica, Co-World, and many of our communication comes from Erica. We have Heather Stewart, who's Counsel and Director of Immigration Policy. And Heather, again, deep knowledge. Heather works particularly with the employer section and with sort of the business sector. She sits at the tables with the business sector to make sure that our objectives and the objectives of the business sectors and other stakeholders are aligned. And then we have also Matt Ruffner, who works on our team. And what Matt does is help sort of collate for us on a daily basis what are all the briefing, what are all the discussions and issues that have come up, so that we stay the pulse and we know what's taking place. That's on our public policy side. Then you have this is a public policy team that I just mentioned here. Matt is our policy and media relations specialist. Then I would like to turn to our regulatory policy folks. For our regulatory policy folks, you have Joanne Hartman, who's a Senior Impact Officer, and she oversees our immigration practices and resources and regulatory. So David Fashnad, who is not, someone that is someone who's known to pretty much all of our members. David has been with NAFSA for quite a long time and is the Director of Immigration Practice and Resources and AM360. We have Steve Springer, who's a Director of Regulatory Practice Liaison, again, deep knowledge area. And then you have Tatiana McCliff, who's the Deputy Executive Director for Leadership and Professional Development Services. This portfolio of regulatory practice falls within her portfolio and her area. So this is simply to say, we've been there, we have the expertise in-house, and we are leveraging that expertise every single day. This is a team that has built long and deep trusted relationship with government agencies and with multiple stakeholders. And so from that perspective, I know that we're in very good hand in terms of the expertise and the knowledge that we have on the team. With that said, I want Jill to also talk a little bit about the U.S. for Success Coalition, because the alignment of NAFSA strategy with the U.S. for Success Coalition is an important one. We believe that in order to do this work, we have always been about coalition building, and we know that coalition building is what's going to take us to where we need to go. And so I wanted Jill to talk about what we've done on the coalition building side and some of our key strategic partners on the coalition building and some of their priorities, so that you know the alignment of what we're doing and the alignment and the bigger alignment of the U.S. for Success Coalition. Jill?
Thanks, Fanta. So the U.S. for Success Coalition is something we're really proud to have had a hand in formulating. NAFSA co-founded and chairs the U.S. for Success Coalition. It's been in existence for a little over a year now, and I think I saw Mark Overman, who's with the Alliance, in the chat. He's one of my colleagues that I work with regularly on the executive committee. So we are in coalition with a number of folks who are leading international education groups like Mark and NAFSA. We're united around welcoming international students to our nation's campuses and making pathways for them to apply their knowledge and skills in our local economies upon graduation. In addition, if you're interested, there are some really specific goals that we've outlined on our website, and I think Carrie's going to provide you with that link in the chat. You'll see that our priorities range from expanding the array of countries from which international students come to the United States, to supporting campus best practices, to facilitating immigration pathways, among others. In addition, I can say, if you are at a higher education institution and this sounds like something that you'd like to be associated with, I'd encourage you to check out our U.S. for Success Pledge, which is something that you can sign your institution up for. And I want to be clear that you need to have the authority to sign the institution onto the pledge, not your office or department. But we'd love for you to join us in this effort. So the executive committee and the advisory council, these are two entities where organizations are a bit more involved. We often act behind the scenes, gathering information about policy proposals and formulating a sound government relations and advocacy strategy that works across the coalition. So of course, NAFSA does a lot of this on our own as well, but this is a way in which we work across a number of different organizations to have, frankly, just more power as a united voice within the sector. These advocacy efforts that we have and will engage in, of course, will include our NAFSA members. So at certain points, we will turn to those of you who are members to say, we have opportunities for you to make your voice heard. And I will just say, as an example, last week we worked in coalition to analyze and inform senators about the possible implications of Section 3 of the Laken-Riley Act. The law, which is expected to be signed, I believe today, includes language that in effect allows state attorneys general to bar the entrance of recalcitrant country citizens. And we expect the Trump administration to take a firm approach to recalcitrant countries. So the state AGs would be unlikely to take action during this presidency, but it might be something that could be utilized in the future. So that's a good example of something that we've worked on just recently, and a way in which we have really soundly collaborated across a number of organizations. So you see there a very clear goal that we're all united around, but then an example of how, when it comes to Congress really delving deeply in the weeds on a specific policy matter, how a number of us have worked together. So I'd be really excited if a number of you at institutions would be so enthused to join us and to take a look at that pledge too. So I'd welcome your participation.
Thank you, Jill. Thank you for that. And Jill chairs the U.S. for Success Coalition. And again, this is really a partnership with many, many organizations. And so thank you to all of the organizations who are partnered, whether it's IIE, we've talked about the Alliance, the President's Alliance, ARC, and, Apply Board, IDP, and the list sort of goes on. So really, this is very important that we work in coalition and that we come with a unified voice around some of these issues. I also know that, Jill, the coalition is working on things like the visa integrity pieces. So there are working groups that have already been formed to look at these areas of prioritization that we know are absolutely essential to our work and are absolutely important to how we welcome international students to this country. With that said, I want to take just a few minutes to have Rachel and you and Ahmad reflect a little bit on this. we had the what I call sort of the tsunami of executive orders that sort of descended on, on January 20th, right after at 12:05, etc. And I know that there are many, many of them that are out there. And among the ones that I know are out there is, this piece about vetting that I know has been put up as one of those things that has been looked at. We know that this issue of passport, and also the gender piece and things like that. So I just wanted to, Rachel, Jill, or others, if you have any initial sort of reflections on some of the executive orders that have come up.
I'm happy to jump in, and Rachel, please join me. I think those that we've outlined include are paying attention to are the birthright citizenship executive order, where we know that individuals who come to this country and have children, it would apply to individuals who are here temporarily, which would include international students or faculty. It's not just those who are undocumented. And so, we looked at, I think, former Vice President Kamala Harris probably would be an example of someone who would be denied citizenship. I'm not exactly sure when her parents received citizenship, but it's a poignant example nonetheless. The enhanced vetting executive order, I think, is a particularly important one. Some folks are concerned about how that might materialize in terms of student protest. We're paying a lot of attention to that. I think we have a very good webinar that we hosted with an immigration attorney that we would recommend if folks are interested in making sure that they're wise in how they advise their students around student protest, to take a look at that. There's also some real concern around, in particular, that enhanced vetting provision. While it's asking for a report that will come back within 60 days, there's also a provision which might permit the government to perform either enhanced vetting or screening of individuals in particular countries, or even warrant a partial or full suspension of admission of nationals from certain countries. And so it sort of opens the door for potential actions, but doesn't take them yet. So it's something that we're continuing to monitor. You referenced the executive order that has to do with sex as opposed to gender identity, and because students who may have availed themselves of a gender X passport, it's not clear whether or not that would continue to be valid. But in terms of our servicing of students in the study abroad area, that would be one to pay attention to rather. And then there's one should note the DEI implications of the executive order on that front, and we view it as harmful. The ICE presence on campuses is not a direct result of an executive order, but we are continuing to hear this morning of the announcement made by the agencies around making themselves have permission now to go onto campuses and into religious spaces to physically be present. And so that's one where we would advise our folks in community to be prepared for what would one do at an institution should that happen. So putting a plan in place is certainly the advice of our regulatory practice colleagues. So I think that's a pretty good overview, Fanta, and Rachel, I'm happy to have you jump in if I've missed anything.
And then we're following very closely the DACA situation as well, with the number of students who are DACA students and the implications of that as well. The initial signal has been that there would be support for DACA, but we actually want to see that in place and to understand, given the number of students who would be impacted by that and how detrimental that would be as well. So that's definitely one of the things that we're paying a lot of attention to as well. Rachel, anything you want to add to that?
No, I think Jill really covered the landscape. Granted, there are a lot of orders that have come out within the past 2 days that we're still sifting through, and of course our webpage is trying to keep up with everything, and of course we're trying to post things as quickly as they as they are released, but then taking the time to review and analyze and pull out the most relevant pieces to make the resource as relevant and useful for our members as we can.
Okay. Ahmad, anything you want to add to this before I turn to certain things?
No, I think the only thing that caught my attention this morning was the news about the ability or the possibility of coming on campuses and the arresting or vetting students who are already here. That's something that I think that we're going to be watching carefully in the coming weeks and months. And then the other thing, I think it's important to see how, I mean, some of these things are still unfolding, so we don't know. And so overreacting does not make sense at this point. We need to see how things develop and then look at the best course of action accordingly.
Thank you. So I want to talk now about what will be our approach and how we're going to engage with you, because this is going to take everybody and it's going to take all of us making sure that we are planful, that we know how to prepare, and that we know how to respond. I always start with the fact, the way you address these things is you plan, you prepare, and you respond. The other piece about this that's important is it's incredibly important given the news cycle and given how much information and misinformation and disinformation we all kind of can find ourselves in many ways confronted with, that we really, really do our homework and make sure we have our facts and we have our facts consistently. And so as part of that effort, we know that for us at NAFSA, one of the ways that we can engage with you is to make sure that there's clear channels that you can rely on, that are reliable, that are consistent, and that are clear. And so with that, we have created within the NAFSA website what I call a sort of one-stop shop. And that one-stop shop, I want to show you a little bit what that one-stop shop is on our website. And we'll want to talk a little bit about the content of that so you know how to navigate that site. Then we will talk about some of the additional resources that will be available to you throughout. So those would be some of the things. And then I want to talk about what I call our social contract. It's very important when we find ourselves in moments like this. There tends to be a lot of chatter, but there's also a lot of panic that sets in. And it's very important for us to stay focused on the things that matter and to stay the course no matter what. And so with that, I want to talk a little bit about the social contract that I'm hoping we can have so that we have an agreement on how we're going to respond when things happen. So with that, we're going to first start with the website. You've heard about the deep expertise that exists within the organization. And it's that deep expertise that's gone ahead and has put together the website for how you can engage with us. So let's, if we can have that website up. So basically, it's called the Current U.S. Administration. And we will, the team will drop the link here. But when you go into the Current U.S. Administration website, it talks about literally what we can anticipate in terms of policies, procedures, and so forth from 2025 throughout the term of this administration. And I want to be clear, we put up these sites with every administration. We find that with this administration, as with any other administration, we learn from previous ones, and we know that clarity is important. So with that, I want to go back up a little bit. Carrie, please go back up. So first of all, you'll see what we stand for. That's where our policy information is. We talk about our NAFSA priorities. That's where you're going to find the memo that we've written in response to the administration. It will talk about take actions when there's actions to be taken. Then it has policy resources that are there. But this will be your go-to page. Whenever you're asking yourself, what's the latest that I need to know? Current U.S. Administration page will be it. If you can please go down, Carrie. If you can scroll down. It will have immediately the latest update. If there's any update that is directly relevant to our field, it will have it here. And so, for example, you'll see the cabinet picks. For example, the cabinet picks for when we're thinking about the State Department, when we're thinking about the Department of Education, the Department of Commerce, and others. You will find those here, the Department of Homeland Security, et cetera. The ones who are key picks that we know we will have to be working with those administration in those departments, you'll find that here. The executive orders, if there are any major ones that have come up, we'll have those here. Then you go down, you have the executive and regulatory actions under the second Trump administration. And here you'll see the, what's been updated. Then you'll see the NAFSA statements. If you have a question about has NAFSA put out a statement or are there comments from NAFSA on this, you will find those here. And then you will find what are some of our events and programs that we'll be putting together as we move forward. And Carrie, if you can scroll down further. And then you have the regulatory practices, the response, and the policy digest. It's all here. My message to you all is there's going to be one place that you can come to get access to all of the key resources in a timely, reliable, consistent, and relevant fashion. That's action number one. The second part of this that I think is important is for us to talk about the resources that you should make sure you avail yourself of. First and foremost, any major thing that's happened and that needs to be communicated out, we will use our social media channels, but also more importantly, there are two key resources that we will use consistently. NAFSA News, which is for members, that comes out every week on Tuesdays. And if it's delayed for whatever reasons, it would be Wednesday. But then also Core World. And Core World is open to everyone, including non-members. We send those out every single week, and we curate what are key things that you need to be aware of. And if there's actions to be taken, we also will outline the actions to be taken, whether it's whether it's commenting on an issue that's come up. We're going to be asking you to do that. But your two key resources that will be dropped in your inbox will be NAFSA News and Core World. So those are things that will be in addition to the website that we've talked about. And I think that's going to be quite important for you to remember. In addition to those resources that we've talked about, I want to talk a little bit about what we are advising members to do starting now. First and foremost, you need to stay in close contact with your general counsel and government relations teams on your campuses. If you're already in contact with them, great. If you're not, this is the time to have your best friends on campus. You're going to need to be relying on your general counsels and your government relations folks, because it's going to be quite important as things come up related to the campus. Like Ahmad talked about, if ICE is coming to campus, those are things that your general counsel has already been thinking about. And there should be a response to how the campus should respond to it. What are the responsibilities and the obligations? You want to make sure you're relying on those items, etc., on those folks, etc. Two, you need to monitor community concerns and be proactive. This is the time to have your ears to the ground with your students. It is understandable that there's quite a bit of anxiety. There's probably some panic for our students. Our ability to listen to hear and to really create spaces for them to come together and to know where to go is incredibly important. This is also the time to really do a full review of the support services you have for students during what will become very stressful time for them and how you support them. It is also the case, I've said this before and I'm going to say it again, we can't support students without supporting staff on our campuses. So your ability to know how to in many ways think about the welfare of your staff who will be on at all times is going to be quite important, and make sure you have the tools and things that are available to them. This is not a sprint. This is a marathon. And I've said this before. If you all want to make sure we stay the course, it's going to be important in times of panic to take a deep breath and take multiple breaths if we need to. It's important for us to do our homework at all times. The most damaging thing we can do is misinformation that's out there and continue to perpetuate that misinformation. Doesn't lead to much, and it's going to make things worse, not better. So it's really, really important for us to make sure we fact check and we make sure we go to the resources that are most consistent and that are most reliable. So I really can't urge that enough. And then always figure out how to find balance between the self-care and stress management. That's really, really important for all of us to think about that and how we do that. Those are just some of the things. We're going to have some of it on our website, but I really wanted to start with that as some of the things that as members, you can start to do within your own respective campuses. Then with that said, what are things that you can expect in terms of upcoming events to keep the pulse and for us to be in community as we move forward? There are a couple of ones, and I want to highlight a few of those. One is that there's a session that will be taking place on resilient leadership. And I don't know if we have the link to that, but there will be a session on resilient leadership that is a peer-to-peer dialogue. This is a time, if you can participate, I would encourage you strongly to participate. This is coming from our International Education Leadership Knowledge Community, and I would encourage you to participate in resilient leadership. Resiliency is going to be key in all of the work that we do. There will be regulatory sessions led by David and Steve on the new administration and for you to become immersed on what are the nomenclature, but what are the things to expect and so forth. So that's going to be important. It will also be an opportunity for us at NAFSA on the regulatory side to hear from you. What is keeping you up at night? What are the issues that you think we need to be aware of and so forth? This will allow for dialogue, and that will be taking place on February 13th. And I want to make sure we drop that into the chat so that you have that as a link. Advocacy Day will be taking place in April. We invite colleagues to the Advocacy Day. We've already had very good response to Advocacy Day. We also will be transparent with you to say there are specific states that we need more representation from for a myriad of reasons. And so Erica and the team that leads Advocacy Day have been putting out messages out to say we need, folks from these different states. And so please pay attention to Advocacy Day, because this will be a very important opportunity for all of us to come together in Washington, D.C., and to be sure that we continue to make our voice heard. So I want to make sure that you're aware of that and what that would involve. And so those are some of the things along with Core World, as well as NAFSA News. What we can tell you is this: we will stay on top of this. We will share as much as we know. But here's the social contract, and I want to talk about the social contract. First and foremost, we will not be responding to every tweet. Let me repeat this. We will not be spending our energy and our time responding to every tweet. We do not believe that that is constructive. We do not believe that that is productive. And what it does, it distracts. We need to stay focused on the real issues and how we move forward. And I know that sometimes I'll get emails from members saying, there's been this tweet out, are you responding? The answer is no. We will be responding to what matters, and we will be responding in ways that we know can actually affect change. The second thing is, we will not be spending our time putting statements after statements after statements out. Have worked in universities for a long time where I was responsible for a lot of these things. And what I can tell you is, if we spend all our time on statements, they have zero value. And at the end of the day, we have to stay focused on change and making sure that we're making change happen. There will also be times when there's a lot going on behind the scene that we are not privy to be able to share that immediately with you all, because we have trust relationship with government agencies, and we need to make sure that we maintain that trust relationship with government agencies. And the last thing you want to do is something that has leaked before it has actually been baked. So there's a lot of things that will happen behind the scenes. Rest assured that our eyes is on the ball, and we are not here asleep, but know that we will not always be sharing what's happening behind the scenes until we're getting to a result. It does not mean that we're not aware. It does not mean that we don't care. On the contrary, we're doing the work that needs to be done. And the less we're distracted, the more we can stay focused on the goal at hand. Thus, that is some of what I can assure you from a social contract I want to start with. The other thing is, every single one of us can continue to educate ourselves. We will provide educational tools to you. The sessions that David and Steve are doing are around some of the educational tools that we've talked about. And as we see the need for more briefings, more educational tools, rest assured that we will not hesitate to bring those up and to make sure that we're following through on those. But what you're hearing from me is, this is a very expert team. The team needs to stay focused and needs to get the work done. We can't do that when we're responding to every tweet. We can't do that when we're literally putting statement out every minute, because after a while it becomes more performative and it's not effective. And so I just wanted to premise that. So we need your help as we move forward, because all of us are in this together. We're going to gather your input. We're going to gather your thoughts, but also know that during this period of time, this piece about what is NAFSA doing about this will also come back to you and say, what are we all doing about this? It's going to take the we. All of us will have to do our part. So when we come to you and we say we need you to take action, please know that we've been very judicious in the things that we've asked you to take action. And we know that that's going to be important to affect change. And so please pay attention to those. And if you can contribute, we ask you to please contribute to that. So with that, I don't know if Ahmad, you want to add anything to what I've just talked about around the social contract, or Jill, or anybody else before we move to questions.
I fully agree and support this strategy and this approach, Fanta. And I encourage actually our colleagues on the webinar, on the call, to, I think this is something, it would be wise for us to follow this approach at our own institutions as well. Focus on the work, focus on getting the information from the right sources, And here at NAFSA, we are, as Fanta mentioned, we have they are working diligently to really get the latest and the most accurate and fact-checked information, and then focus on our students and supporting them, not reacting, not running and doing this work through social media and reacting to social media. This is not it's not fruitful to do so, and it's not what we need, what our students need and our staff need.
And the other thing that I want to say this, we're not in this alone, right? I can't reiterate enough the coalition and the work of many of our partners. And many of them are joining us today, whether it's English USA and everyone is vested in our field and is vested in this. And I want to make sure that we all understand that we're not doing this alone. I've talked about NAFSA and the work that we're doing here. I can say that about every single one of our partners who are part of this. Know that we are working together on this. I've mentioned Heather, who sits on the business sector. Know that we are also trying to build bridges with key sectors that we know are vested in the same issues that we are. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, there will be many areas of disagreements, but we're going to work on the areas where there's common ground. And we will find those common grounds and we will make sure that we're working together to reach those common ground. And so with that, I want to get to some of the questions that are here. One question that see here, thank you, Cesar, for that question, is how can people from abroad help? There are multiple ways that people from abroad can help. As you're abroad, you will have the temperature of what you're hearing from abroad. We need that information. We need those insights. And many times you will be able to help us anticipate what may be coming down the pike. So the sooner we can hear from you about what you're hearing in terms of the pulse from the constituents abroad, the better that will help us to continue to make the case here in the United States. And so that pulse check is going to be quite important for how you can help us. The other thing that can be helpful is that when we decide to make the comment letters and others, that's also open to several of our folks there as well. So we encourage you to join us in that voice because that's quite important. And so that's another way that you can be incredibly helpful to us from abroad. But you have the pulse of what's coming down the pike. You're hearing what's going on, and we need to be able to connect those dots, and we need to be able to connect those dots fast. We'll work with our partners on some of the data and insights and trends, but your ears on the ground will be incredibly helpful to us as we move forward. The other way that you can be helpful to us being abroad is this: do not give up on us. This is the most important message that I can send to you all. We need you all. Do not give up on us. We've got to work together and we have to believe in the larger goal of why this matters. And there will be time when, again, for me here in the United States, I will be wringing my hands saying, my goodness, I can't believe that we are trying to be apart from the world. The only way we can assure that we are not apart from the world is to have you all continue to join us. So whether it's at the NAFSA conference, when we come together as a global community, when we're having these kind of forums and everything else, it's important. And again, this is a very important part of it. And that is, governments are one thing, people are another. And again, I want to make sure that we rest on the people part of that, because we do believe, all of us, that people to people is what is essential. So to our colleagues abroad, please don't give up on us. That's my other message for how you can be helpful. Other comments, other things that our colleagues have to say. And again, Joanne has put, "You are welcome here," is another one. We need to send a very strong message to our international students who right now must be afraid, to our scholars who are confused about what may be coming next, and all of those things. Our ability to continue to signal in small and large ways to our students that they're valued, that we see them, to our scholars and our faculty that they're valued and that we see them, cannot be understated. It is incredibly important to create intentional spaces to listen, to hear. We can't guarantee anything or everything, but we can hear, and where we can be of support, let's make sure that we are of support to our communities. So this idea of community and community of care is going to be ever more important for all of us to do, and I would really urge all of us to think about that. We are not disempowered. We are not disempowered.
So Fanta, I see a couple questions that I can get us started in responding to. One individual has asked about the Lake and Riley bill.
Yes.
And I think, Rachel, I'd like for you to take this on. The question is that the bill has a clause of recalcitrant countries. These are countries that has not agreed to take the deported individuals from the U.S. New student visas could be delayed or denied from those countries. India and China are on the list. How do we address this issue given visa delay and denial is already a big issue? This is the bill that I referenced earlier. I want to clarify. I think the bill has not been signed into law yet, but agree that it will be. Rachel, can you just talk about this a little bit, please?
Sure. So with respect to Lake and Riley, yes, there is that provision that allows for state attorneys generals to sue the State Department to stop issuing visas to countries that refuse to take their deportees back. And I think a resource that was flagged from 2020 that highlighted, so what is the top countries that are on that list of countries that are deemed recalcitrant, and of course China, India are on that list. I think on the as unfortunate it is to have that provision in the bill, because once something is in law, it is very hard to get it overturned. On the positive side, with this current administration, I don't foresee any state attorneys general taking that step to sue, because this is going to be a government that's going to already be one step ahead of taking action against recalcitrant countries. And we've already seen news reports of India reaching out to try to broker with the U.S. government about being willing to take back more deportees than it has in the past. So I think in terms of an immediate concern, I don't think there is necessarily an immediate concern, but it is concerning that this provision is in law, because that means it outlives this administration, and whatever the next administration that we have, if there's a state attorney general that is unsatisfied, they have this lever available to pull on.
Thanks. And sorry, Fanta, there's another question in the chat that I think is best for you. Recognize Stephen Abiapati, who is one of our board members. Thank you, Stephen. He says NAFSA's approach and engagement with new U.S. administrations has been one of collaboration towards mutually beneficial outcomes for NAFSA and the U.S. Is there a plan B in case where values are so divergent that collaboration is impossible?
So, Stephen, I think that's a great question. And here's what I would say: call me Pollyannish, but I am one who believes that there's always a place of common ground. And the other reason why I say this, and I said this in our previous IE30, 2016 is not 2024. 2017 is not 2025. The world has changed. The United States continue to change. What is also, I think, unique, and you will see this reflected in our memo to the administration, is the role of businesses and the presence of businesses in this administration. If you look at just the inauguration, the big players who were visible and very visible strategically, and in this administration, the business sector will have tremendous influence, I expect, for a myriad of reasons. One of the things that we have is story to tell, and we have a very compelling story to tell. That is the relationship of international education to workforce development and economic development. And so I do think that alone is actually a very important common ground for us in our work with international education, whether it's looking at study abroad and the cultural competencies that are needed, or international students and the myriad of benefits that they bring to this country. So I say this to say, yes, we will have a plan B. I'm not going to talk to you about the plan B here right now, but we do, and we'll have a plan B. But I do believe that there's common ground. And I do believe that we will find some areas of common ground. With that said, will there be areas where we'll disagree vehemently? Yes, we will. And also in disagreeing vehemently on some things, we're working with the administration, but also we're working with Congress. So we have to keep our eyes on all sides of this, because that's one of the strengths of the system, is that we have to be looking at Congress and the administration. And I know that some have said in the past, but this will be the first time that we've had an administration where they've had the presidency and the House and the Senate. It is not. We've had that under the Obama administration, Rachel, if I remember correctly, where we had
That is correct.
that same scenario played out. We've been down this road before, where all of these have been galvanized by the same party. And so clearly, there are folks who will have to care about their states. There are folks who have to care about the cities in their states and so forth. So that is why the coalition is so important. That is why you all on university campuses are so important to all of this, because it's going to be governors who will care about these issues. It will be mayors of cities who will care about these issues. And we have compelling case to make for why the work that we do is in all of the folks' interests. And so that's an important component of it. So simply to state, yes, we always plan for the worst case scenario. We plan for best case scenario, but I do believe that there's room for common ground. And Ahmad, you may want to add some things to that. Are there other questions that are here?
I just want to add to some of the questions. I think a couple of the questions refer to what do we do and how do members engage. Let's not forget the interest groups, the knowledge communities that we have at NAFSA. These are opportunities for you to connect with others and find out who's doing what during these issues as these issues come up. So the membership has always been very active, and this is a time where we can come together because we all are sharing and facing the same scenarios, and we can learn from each other. And the different structures that we have at NAFSA allow for us to really come together and do some of that sharing.
I heard, one person said, what advice would you give to a small college who only has one worker? How can one person try to keep up with the changes coming ahead? What I would say is make sure that you stay connected with the knowledge communities, and also make sure that you stay connected with your region, because those are really the folks who will, in many ways, be your resource people and be your community on the ground. So even as a one-person office, know that there's, as Ahmad said, we have communities. And the knowledge communities is one, but also the regions are incredible part of it. What makes NAFSA what it is are really our members and our member leaders working hand in hand with our staff. It takes really the collective for us to get the work that we get done. And one cannot underestimate how much our members step up and what they give every single day on behalf of their institutions, the field, and NAFSA. So I just want to reiterate that, know that even as a one-person office, you're not alone. Make sure that you're staying connected with your region and you're staying connected with your knowledge communities. Other questions that we have here, other reflections, other comments that we have here. So I want to go back to where I started. First and foremost, we have a one-stop, which is the website. It's incredibly important to see that as your go-to. We have NAFSA news that is available to you that drops every week for members, but we have also Co-World that is open to anyone and everyone. Please sign up for those. And the website is open to everyone. It's not only for members, it's for everyone. This is in service to the field, and we believe very much that is needed. In addition to that, know that we have a series of events that are coming up. One in particular that is peer-to-peer. Thank you to our International Education Leadership Knowledge Community. It is about resilient leadership. Make sure, if you can, you attend that. Our regulatory practice people will be having a webinar on February 13th. Make sure, if you can, that you participate in those. We have Advocacy Day in April. If you can, make sure you participate in those. We have San Diego and the NAFSA conference that will be in May. If you can attend, we highly encourage you to come. This is where we replenish our cup. This is where we have the real talk about where we are and where we're going, and where we come together as a global community. And know that San Diego is waiting for us. And so that's another avenue. But more than anything else, as we hear information, we'll make sure we get that to you. Also, as you hear things, filter that to us so that we're working in tandem around those pieces. That's going to be quite important. Lastly, if we find that there's a need to come together for briefings, we will not hesitate. We'll have other IE30. Know that this is not going to be the first and the last one. So that's another piece that I just want to sort of just reiterate to all of us, that that's going to be quite important as we move forward. So with that said, the other piece I want to say is what is also different with 2025, the US certainly has its own sort of challenges and opportunities, but the rest of the world does as well. And that's another piece that we cannot lose sight of. this is a time of tremendous change around the world. So if we believe in our heart that the work that we do is ever more important, then we need to know that we need to stay the course and we need to do that together. And so with that, I want to thank Ahmad. We're very excited to have you at the helm at this important pivotal moment. I want to thank Jill. I want to thank Rachel, but I also want to thank all of my colleagues here at NAFSA in regulatory practice and in public policy for the work that they do every single day on behalf of our members and the field. And to every single one of our colleagues, thank you for taking the time to join us today. And let us make sure that we take care of each other, and let us make sure that we take care of ourselves. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful afternoon. For some, it's evening. For others, it's early morning. Thank you. And thank you to our coalition partners who've been on the journey with us. We look forward to continuing this work together. Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful afternoon or evening or morning. Thanks.